Hi, everybody. My name is Mary Giamatti. I'm a managing director at Moray Global, and we are excited to have you be a part of our session today around contract lifecycle management. I am very excited to be joined by a colleague of mine, Juan, who is from a very large biotech company. And so I thought what we would do is we want to have this open conversation. We want to talk about, contract management today. Juan is going to talk a little bit about the work that we've been doing together over at BioMarin as well. But to begin, I just wanted to give a little bit of background about myself, and then give an intro to my panelists here. So my name is Mary Giamatti. Like I mentioned, I have over a decade of experience in legal technology and really helping corporate legal departments be more effective using and embracing the technology across the board. So a lot of what I've been doing is really working with general counsels and corporate legal departments and technology and bridging the gap and helping them understand how to use the technology more efficiently, how to gain metrics and KPIs and help across the board the work that they've been doing around around their corporate legal department. So I'm super excited to be here today to be talking to you about a very hot topic in the industry, contract lifecycle management, CLM. A lot of folks call it CM. But what we're going to talk about today is not only the CM, the contract management part, which I think of as the repository, but we're also going to talk about the life cycle and the process work that we have been working with Juan and team over at BioMarin. So for that, I'd like to introduce Juan, who is currently the project and operations manager at BioMarin. He is in charge of all the technology strategy, operations, and initiatives for a global department of 57 people. Previously, Juan had worked in a startup where he really laid the foundation for the global legal department. At the startup, he also began his journey around learning SQL and have recently picked up other skills along the way. So I'm really excited. Juan, thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, pleasure to be here.
Okay, so we're going to dive right in. What's nice about it is that we have some questions here, and we're going to kind of keep it open-ended. If you have questions that you'd like to submit, please submit them to the chat room, and we'll keep an eye on them as well. So, are we ready, Juan? You want to jump right in?
Sure, ready.
Okay. So one of the things that I would like to talk a little bit about is, early in the journey and what led the organization to change contract management and the tool, thinking about, how you wanted to redesign your processes. So really, what were the thought processes, why making the change?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for us was when I first joined BioMarin, I joined BioMarin as a contract associate or contract manager, as it's known in other companies. And the biggest thing I remember as someone that used our previous CLM system day in, day out was just how much it didn't fit our process. And that's not to say that our process was a unique or it had to be our way, but it was so different from our process that really we were trying to do something that wasn't us. It didn't fit our business needs. And that just led to people not using it. There was no structure or guidance. We didn't invest time and money into it, so there was no automation. It was a lot of manual work. So when we realized that it wasn't benefiting us in any way, we had no metrics, and really the metrics that we had weren't the metrics that we wanted. It was just time to start looking for a new tool that kind of was more modern, can adapt to our processes, and just give us better metrics to make better decisions. Yeah.
No, that makes sense. And I think that's, it's interesting. We've heard that before going into the department. What were when we think about what were the three kind of top reasons when you were looking at it, because the space is really, there's a lot of options out there, and the space is really crowded. And what I mean by the space is there's a lot of technology options out there, and for contracts. So what were the top 3 things you really were looking at and really wanted from a business perspective to really help, gain momentum? Because as you said, you didn't have usage. It wasn't efficient for your processes. So what were the top 3 things that you were looking for in a new tool?
Yeah, I think the biggest things we were looking at, and we also had our IT department involved with all this, and they have their own set of priorities. But I think the 3 things that we kind of all landed on were, we needed a tool that was malleable enough that it can fit a variety of needs. As a big organization, we have over 100 different template types, not just master SOW. We also have SaaS agreements, we have manufacturing agreements, clinical trial agreements. So we needed something that can fit all the business needs, because everyone functions very differently. Our Latin America group, for example, you need to do more wet signatures as opposed to DocuSign, so you can't force everyone to fit into this nice square box. It needs to be flexible enough to adjust for, region variance. We needed it to not be, once we got out of hypercare, we needed it so it didn't require 20 different people to support that system. I don't know how it is in other companies, but, headcounts for legal don't come as freely as something in sales or commercial. So we couldn't have it need 20 people just to support it, just to go. And I think we just wanted it to be scalable. We wanted a good business partner that we knew was going to be innovating in the space. We didn't want a tool that was going to be abandoned. Yeah. That's kind of what happened with our previous CLM. It felt like they kind of just stopped investing in it, so it just wasn't fitting our needs. Another big thing was the metrics, but we felt that if we had those other 3 key areas covered, as long as we can extract the data, we can put it in any BI tool that we need. So it was very critical, but it wasn't critical that the tool itself had metrics in the tool itself. We could just grab that data and put it into another BI tool and make it fit kind of what we want.
Yeah. No, that's good. It's interesting. I'm going to touch upon something that you said about the partner, and meaning the vendor and the product, and making sure that you're looking at somebody that's being innovated, right? So I think that's really key. And when you think about when you think about DocuSign, a lot of folks think about, e-signature, right? But I think that with the CLM platform and the integration into the Agreement Cloud, they have been very innovative. I think, over the last few years, I agree with you. I think making sure that you have a company and a partner and a vendor that can grow with you along the way, because I know that not long ago we started doing process and workflows for the clinical trial department, right, and the division, and in making sure of that. And then also with a large company like yourselves, you want to make sure that they're going to be around for some time, right, and making sure that you're investing in a product like that. So totally agree and understand that. I know that from our work together that you moved from one system to, DocuSign CLM. Can you talk a little bit about the process you went through? Because I think people really want to understand or hear about, a lot of people feel like sometimes it's overwhelming to think about moving. But I think if you think about it the right way and you have a good plan in place, and the support to do the move and to start the cleanup of templates and playbooks and things along the way, I think the way you all went about it was really well thought out. So can you talk a little bit about that and, and some examples that, you did when you started thinking about the move from the first system to the DocuSign CLM system?
Yeah, I think we had, I think like for a project this size, and this is probably one of the bigger projects that a legal department can probably take on themselves. Uh, it's a pretty big tool, and depending where you are, it could seem kind of daunting, but we had an RFP process and an RFI process. So, we got a bunch of demos, we consolidated, a short list of, I think it was like 4 vendors that we were interested in. We also tried to figure out who our implementation partner was going to be, which ended up being you guys. So I think having a strong implementation partner to ask you the right questions, because there's so many things like that you have to think about. You're probably, when you're in the middle of the project, you're probably like, oh, I just want to move my documents from this system to this system, and that's all you're looking at. It's like a very linear A to B thing, but there's a lot of steps that happen in between that. So the biggest thing for us was there was actually a lot of legwork that needed to happen where you can do this on your own without really anyone like Moray or any implementation partner or a vendor before you even get to the stage of picking and paying and going. There's a lot of legwork you can do, as a global department. I think we had 10 different NDA templates, and really the only change to most of those NDA templates was the governing law. And that was, we were kind of like, okay, let's just consolidate it into one, and let's find a tool that can basically switch out the governing law or switch out this language based on some logic that we know in our head. Let's write that down. So we started gathering requirements. We started trying to gather details on how many documents we have to migrate. If we're trying to clean those documents, like the metadata associated with them, if you have any metadata with it, if you're trying to transform it, if you're trying to refile things. Also just thinking about the end goal process, like what is your to be state? Like where do you want to be? So one of the biggest things that we had was, we had 2 admins or 2 headcounts that basically would spend, I would say 500 hours each a year doing a manual thing, like downloading a document, uploading it to DocuSign, and then, downloading it and moving it into the repository. So and it doesn't sound much, but, if you say it only takes them 6 minutes or 5 minutes to do this task, if you multiply it at the volume that we were at, which was 9,000, it's a lot of time. So you have your to be process, and that will also lead you to kind of, where do you want to be? Where do you want to go? And that also helps you with your requirements. And then you go and try and find the best partner that can get you there. You might not hit everything that you strive for. And hopefully if you chose a good vendor or a third party, they'll develop and work with you to get to that stage. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. I think one of the things that I like that you touched on is there is a lot of work that can be done prior to, like you said, starting go and starting to pay, right? Like you said, and that's really the cleanup work. And sometimes what we have found, I would say, in implementations is that folks say, oh, well, it takes so long. Well, it does take long. There's a long time. It doesn't take long to actually stand up the system at all. It is the process and the work and the cleanup work, especially if we're moving from another system. And so I often will, help folks and help them understand we can stand it up and do some easy approval workflows in a quick amount of time. It's really the thought process about in thinking about your templates and working with your attorneys, and it's the best opportunity to clean those things up. And so the way you went about it makes sense. And of course, it's a large, and we're talking a large department, but I even think for, if, we call it the small, medium, and, large, types of deployments. And, it really works for both, right? And I think it's, all three different sizes has a way of being able to do that work at the right amount of time. So Juan, so we have a question from the audience, and the question is, how do you imagine the future interplay of CLM and DM? Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to understand is it DM, the document management?
Yes, yes, document management. Okay. Yeah, we get that question a lot. That's a good question.
Yeah, and is this like document management in terms of? Unfortunately, I'm also in I'm the records management program manager. So is it document management in records management, or is it document management like once you've executed an agreement, there are some back office processes that also need to be accounted for, tracked, and milestones need to be met. So for example, let's say you've signed an SOW or some sub-agreement, and now you need to bring that resource on board, and it needs to kick off a whole nother flow on the back end to basically get that person a laptop, badge, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have milestones for certain agreements, that kind of document management. Sorry.
I would think, and we can, if they want to ask another question, feel free, the audience. But I would think one of the things I would say is probably more of the document management as, law departments think of as when version control and storing documents, and, how is the workings together of the CLM? How do you see that in the future? So you have a contract management system, and then, a document management system. And I think more of it from, drafting and working on documents. So that's how I would read the question.
Okay. Yeah, I think, so at least with DocuSign CLM, we have versioning on there. It could be a little bit better in terms of maybe locking it so other people can't make changes while you're making changes. And I know you can do it. It's just not as seamless as we'd want it to be. I'm hoping that it goes into a direction more kind of similar to Microsoft Teams, where it's more collaborative. Right now, it's kind of, I'm not saying it's not collaborative. It's just like you have to kind of build a workflow to kind of make it more collaborative, and it's just not as intuitive as, I guess, if you drop something in MS Teams and then you're kind of commenting and going from there. It's actually very quick if you've ever used MS Teams or another tool similar to it. So I'm hoping that CLM goes in that path. I feel like now, so DocuSign CLM or Spring CM started as a document management system first, and then progressed into that. So there's a blend of both of those systems kind of happening right now. I don't think I've heard of some companies that have a separate document management system, like a separate repository from CLM. So like the CLM is kind of the flow, and it resides somewhere else, like in a SharePoint site. I have heard of that, but for us, we were trying to consolidate systems and confusion to enable user acceptance and just have everyone know where the source of truth is. Yeah. So we kind of were like, we're not going to explore that, and we just put all of our ducks into DocuSign CLM. Yeah. For better or worse.
Well, I guess, yeah. I mean, when it does get, in having it all in one place is really positive. So, one of the things I want to switch gears to is talk a little bit about, change management. One of the things that we see kind of what's going on and is how does change management play into, the successful deployment? We understand a lot of that and understand how this plays into it, but what type of strategy did you find that was most helpful when going into, when working through your deployment?
Yeah, I think, we had a very long change management plan, or very extensive. For us, I think DocuSign CLM and our CLM system rollout was such a customer facing, and by customer I mean like your internal stakeholders within your own company. It's such a outward facing tool as opposed to something like I don't know, just something that like only the legal department uses. So we use that opportunity to really go out there as a department and just show people that we can roll out a tool, really try and show people what the legal department actually does. We're not just doing versioning over here and negotiating. We were trying to have a lot of fun with it as well, to show people it's not just a bunch of attorneys that are just grouchy. So we had a lot of fun with that. We had very long training sessions.
I remember. Yep.
Yeah, it was like 6 weeks long. We unfortunately had a global deployment, so this also depends how big your organization is. But we had over 500 users globally that we had to train, and you can't just say like you have to be in this room at this hour at this time, and if you're not there, then you missed out. So we had to have training sessions after go live. We had to have we felt that you have to tackle your issues head on. So if there are any issues with the system, you just got to call it out. We wanted to be over communicating with our end users, just so they know that we hear their concerns, we hear the issues that they're experiencing, and we're working diligently to get them fixed. And we just want to increase kind of the operational excellence when we were doing the change management. So, I think, Mary, I'm not sure if you know, but we had like a cooler. So like at our company, we had back before COVID, we had, these thing called coolers where basically it's like a company barbecue. And we basically used that to, get the message out when it was going live, when the training sessions are, what the tool is, and really just show that we were really excited for it. And I think if you're excited for it, then I think people can see that and they feel that, and it makes them motivated to get past that initial hump of, I don't like it because it's different. I don't like it because I'm used to the old system. And anything really, people are adverse to change, including my own department as well. Specifically, the legal department is very adverse to change. But
yes. Well, I think that you hit a key thing, which is I do think that people don't realize the importance of the change management and communication in these types of implementations. And the reason why I say that is not because of the years of doing them, but really because when you talk about I often, when you talk about doing things, like you said, we wanted to have fun with it. Sometimes it's a little corny. People have contests because they want to rename the system. I have found that really taking advantage of that type of communication and excitement from the top down really does help the adoption. Would you agree with that? I mean, I think, especially when you're dealing with a global deployment, making sure that you have across the board have really, you're sending the clear communication message of what this system's going to do, how it could benefit them. It's really about me, right? How I can be more effective in the work that I'm doing. And so I agree with you. And it's great to hear that you all did that and you felt the same way. I do remember your training being very intense, and you have a very formal program, which I also think training is helpful too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so just, we do have a couple of questions coming in, but I just wanted to ask one more thing about change. So I'm assuming you had some pushback, right? I mean, there's always some pushback to these types of, systems, or you have one or two users that are like, I'm not going to use it. And so how did you, how did you deal with that? What was some of the tips and tricks that you had to use in order to get some of the naysayers on board?
Yeah, I think the quickest way that we got them on board is we looked at our previous system, who were the heaviest submitters of contracts. And for good or worse, at UAT and even earlier, we brought those people in and we're like, go ahead and break it as much as you can. And I think there was a lot of bugs. There was a lot of bugs, and you don't realize really just like how people use, you know, you think that you know how someone uses a system, and you create these, like, I look at them as when you go bowling, you create the bumper so people can't go out of, like, you know, out of line. So you're not going to have a rogue user, you know, who creates a SaaS agreement, signs it without anyone ever knowing. That'd be like the worst scenario. So you create these bumpers, and then someone's like, oh, well, I'm using it in this complete different method that I've never even seen in my life. And when we got those people involved, and we were fixing their issues and meeting their needs, you know, especially like in that UAT phase, you know, within a week or two, we were getting them a different version of the CLM in front of them and saying like, okay, now try it. Is it working? Yes. Good. And if you can get those people to be like, okay, like my thoughts and my concerns are being heard. That's not to say that they're always right. You know, sometimes you got to be like, maybe don't use the system that way. That's not the right way. But if they see that their concerns are being addressed and heard, they kind of on their own went out and became kind of like change champions for us.
That's awesome.
They ended up, once they picked up the system, they realized some of the gains that they were getting from it. And they kind of started training other users. I mean, at a certain stage, I remember at the beginning, I was getting swamped with so many questions that I was like, oh, you know, this person's around the same part of the organization. Like, oh, you guys are all in manufacturing. I was like, there's this other user in manufacturing that could help you out. And she can actually give you pointers on how to use the system for manufacturing needs. And she was like, yeah, I'll help them. Like, that's an easy question. And so they were even like helping me out answer some questions, because I was like, I don't know everything about manufacturing, how they use it.
Right.
So I think that's kind of how we got them. I think where we struggled, like, I'll be frank, I think where we struggled was abroad. You know, we had certain regions like Turkey that it was kind of hard to, I don't think it's a very small, like, office. It's just, it was just hard to penetrate. We don't have a legal presence there. So wherever we had, like, you know, in our EMEA office, we had people in EMEA, so it was kind of easy to coordinate with them and get them to get their change management people going. But in Turkey, the person sits in Ireland, so it's kind of like, you know, they're off on their own island, so it could be a little bit hard.
Yeah, the global deployments are tough. I would say, you know, I would agree with you 100%. One of the things I think people should do is really, you know, the naysayers, make them part of the UAT. I agree. Make them part of, you will find how fast they turn into, you know, advocates for these systems. I agree. Because sometimes I think people are afraid to bring in more difficult users into that because they don't want to hear, I think, but doing it up front is really key. And I would say that to the audience as well. Okay, so we have a few more questions. If we run out of time, we can say, for any of the questions not answered, we can follow up after the event. But let me, okay, so let me get my little old eyes here. So one of the questions came in, some CLMs offer the capability for automated review of contracts, particularly on the other side, on other side's paper, I think on third-party paper. Any experience in using these tools? How good are they?
Yeah, so that's actually one of the things that we're looking at as a department this year, is something like LogGeeks. I don't know if I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say their name or not, but I actually know like one of the people that started that company. But I personally don't have any experience with that, but that is something kind of like the next venture that we're looking into. So I know that for me, I come from a startup and you're always reviewing third-party paper.
Right. Right. Yeah.
As opposed to at BioMarin, we're on the bigger side, so people are always using our paper. So that was something that even for me, when I switched as a contract manager, it was hard to get used to. I was like, what do you mean I can push people around?
Yeah. So, well, when you're big like that, you sort of can sometimes, but that's not always the case. Well,
no,
you know,
I know.
That's an interesting tool. I think, well, I'm going to say a couple things on that, which is, I think that we see more and more of this type of request coming in about how the experience, you know, this is kind of I would say it's not another generation, but it's new features. And I would say that, I know in being one of the strategic partners with DocuSign that they have I just saw some of their new feature sets. It's called Analyzer, that allows us to do this internally too. So again, one of the reasons why, when you think about a large company and companies that have these types of tools, we want to make sure that, you know, we're always providing feedback and taking, you know, and this nuance of doing the automated review. You know, first of all, nothing's ever just always automated. There's some work that has to go on, but I have definitely seen a lot of progress in this types of solutions dealing with contracts. So I agree. I think it's kind of the next. Once you're up and running, like you all are, you have a sophisticated environment. The next thing is, how do we automate more? How do we make it easier for our end users? And I think that definitely is key to do that for sure.
Yeah, I think I would say for the person that asked that question, you know, like Mary said, the robots are definitely not going to replace our jobs. There will always be some kind of human level of intervention. But I think the biggest thing you need to take, the person that asked that question, is for that automation to be really good or consistent with what, you know, your company standard is you're going to need a lot of data showing it different variances for the machine learning to get better and better, basically. So if you're a very young company and you only have 100 contracts you've signed since you've started your startup, it's probably not going to be too effective. You know, I think if you had it obviously varies, but if you had 50,000 examples, it's definitely going to pick up on what it is that your standard is. So just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I do think that the automation, what we're hearing about, not just the automation, but also kind of how we want to do metrics and KPIs, and how we want to really scale these systems when we're thinking about that is really something that's, you know, really happening right now. And I think the change is, you know, really from, you know, CM, which I consider CM, contract management, you know, it's the device, it's the workflow, it's being able to have the repository. I think folks are now really understanding the importance and the efficiency around the L part of that, the life cycle, really being able to automate there and have you all, you know, really take advantage of these types of technologies. I mean, if you think about the world we live in today, right, with COVID, I think a lot of things have to be automated, have to have the flow of automation and e-signature and bringing it all kind of together in this cloud world that we live in, right? And I think that, you know, I think this is one of the areas that we've seen, including some of the vendors we work with, but one of the areas we've seen that continues to grow, even in the world that we're living. Do we say post-COVID? I'm not sure we're post anything yet, but that's what I would say. So I think we're kind of running out of time here. I just wanted to, if you have questions and we didn't get to them, we promise we'll get to them after the event. But Juan, I really wanted to thank you. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. We appreciate your partnership, and we appreciate you taking the time to talk to the audience about your experiences and the work that you're doing. And it's really exciting. So we are really appreciative of it. So thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Good luck, everyone.
Thank you.